Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's been a few days since I did my last card on my archetypes, and so I figured I'd get right back to it again today and talk to you about the Hermit as an archetype. One of the most astounding things about this card is that number nine, and I resonate really well to number nine. Number nine is endings. And of course, we know the next number is beginnings. But when I was back in 1988, when I was beginning to study the tarot, I had a teacher who had me come over her house once a week, and she talked to me about the cards, and we played with them. And she told me that the Hermit was her card. And the more she told me about the card, the more I agreed later that the Hermit was me. And so, even though I didn't get to finish my time with this lovely lady, she did spark an interest in me that started with the cards and went into all kinds of other things. The Hermit to me is the epitome of the light shower, showing you the way to go. But it's much more than that archetypally, and we'll talk about it. It took me some time to plow through the information that I had and to find the realizations that I wanted to bring up. So I will let you know what I found out. Some of it comes from a very good book that I have been utilizing called Tarot Journey by Nichols. And so there are parts in there that I'm going to spring out from that book. But I want to talk about the Hermit today, the Hermit in the Rider-Waite deck that comes after Strength. Okay, put the Hermit down for a minute. So who doesn't like time alone to relax, to ponder, to take a nap, to dream? I, like you, if you are so inclined, love to have time with people, but dearly and really love time alone. I am not very good if I'm not alone some of the time, as a matter of fact. Although I'm not an introvert, I am an extrovert. There are times in my life where I become more and more introverted, dependent upon what's going on. So looking inside of ourselves usually awakens us to our potentials. Our potentials are that which lie within us, that allow us to see what we can make of ourselves in this life. Those potentials are often overlooked as something that might appear to be scattered or perhaps an avocation instead of a vocation. I remember telling my dad that I loved karate and that I would have loved to have taught it in a studio. And he said, well, perhaps you should make that your avocation. You really a vocation, and that's just something you're interested in. I love my dad dearly, and he never really steered me wrong, but I was also at the impressionable age where I probably could have just sloughed off life quite a bit, and so it was important for him to guide me in some way. So the Hermit is the wise old man, and the most important thing about this particular card is he is male. He shows up as the wise old man in movies, in TV series, in novels, in spiritual searches. He's the ascetic, and he is the one that retreats unto himself, goes deeply within, provides a light for the rest of us if we look for it. He is the one we turn to. I won't say he's the fatherly one, but in a lot of ways he is, even though he's not the archetypal father. He is the archetypal wise old man. Because we have endured over 5,000 years of patriarchy, we hadn't come to the conclusion when these cards came out yet that we have the wise crone, which is the component of that. Many people look at the wise crone as a witch, something bad, but it has nothing to do with anything bad. It has to do with wisdom or time. We have the maiden, we have the mother, and we have the crone, and they represent three parts of a woman's life. But the Hermit does focus more on the man, on the wise old man, and so I'm going to follow through with that, with the archetypal idea. Even though there are other newer ideas that are out there, archetypally he still remains a man. The figure who embodies wisdom that isn't found in books, that can only be found through experience. He's silent, he offers us space, and he holds space for us. He listens to us, he doesn't sermonize or judge us, and he's the archetype of the spirit, our meaning in this chaos of life that we live. He only uses his lantern to illuminate his path because he is a wanderer. And, there are those types of people that I would say I probably am, or was at least, a wanderer. Now I'd like to stay put, but it's not in the cards, so to speak. But because I identify so much with my teacher's card, and there'll be another card that I identify with later. Every time I see this card, I am guided to the lantern lighting the way for the soul, but the light comes from within. It's nothing that is gained from something on the outside. The light he carries is the light he holds. And so it's only a representative form of light. Prior to the medieval times, the hermit did not carry a lantern. The hermit carried a what do you call it? The one on Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, a time, the timer, the hourglass, So sorry. He doesn't look back. He doesn't look behind him because that's already gone. He's only focused ahead or right before him. He's assimilated the wisdom that he had in the past and looks to what the future potential can be. If you're getting this card, you're being asked to look to the future as to what the potential is, not to look backwards. That isn't where the answers are. Not even the answers are contained and obtained with. It's very easy for someone like myself to say, or anybody else, is that I'm just as much on my spiritual path as the rest of you. And, I still have a long way to go. I may have some wisdom, I may have some knowledge, I may have some, sage advice in some ways, but at the same time, it never ends. We never become that. We are always in a state of becoming. And the hermit reminds us that we are the embodiment of those things. He will see the future potential and illuminate himself more because he is a mystic. And a mystic is accessible to every single one of us. We all have the ability to become mystics. He seeks the flame of his inward light and is careful to hold it so as not to dim as he journeys. In other words, if he's not careful in the way that he holds the lantern, the wind can come up and blow out the lantern. So he's got to keep his eye on the lantern and the way he's going so that he doesn't trip and fall, that the light doesn't go out. Most seekers want the treasure both literally and symbolically, as to remain the undiscovered times. I'm reminded of a high school and college piece of work that probably all of you have read, The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. I did not appreciate them when I was going through high school because we were made to read them in Old English. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't get what the whole thing was. And it wasn't until I was in grad school where I was working with the Canterbury Tales forward and about all the travelers that I realized how many symbols of, so to speak, religious monks, priests, popesses, all of those things were, and the symbolic journeys in which they took, because they could not necessarily go outside of themselves and go to another, go to a physical for them to travel. Although in the Canterbury Tales, they all got together and they all went to Glastonbury. And the other get together and they all trek to the Kaaba. The Kaaba is a place that all Muslims are supposed to see at least once in their life. It is not ever seen by anybody else. It's called the Dome of the Rock. and it is only for the faithful. And it's a pilgrimage that they take. So we're talking about pilgrimages. And I like the imagery of pilgrimages because pilgrimages tell us that we are seeking something in ourselves uh, for enlightenment, for our knowledge, for self-knowledge, and that's the way that we journey to get to that point. Um, the other thing I want to bring up is that most of the time, if somebody, this would have been probably in the 70s or 80s, if somebody wanted to embark on some kind of a spiritual life or journey, what they would have to do, or what they thought they had to do, was to give up everything and become an ascetic, or go to an ashram, or become a follower of some kind of guru at the time. They thought that they could not coexist in the physical world and still gain spiritual enlightenment. So many times people would even get divorced because they couldn't do it. They didn't think they could do it while they were married. Or they would go to Tibet, or they would go to India, and they would find a place to go and meditate and become that which they felt, they were supposed to be. But even though we have a lot of distractions in our earthly life, it's very important for us to show the balance between our spiritual and our earthly physical lives, because we have to live in this life, even though we aspire to being more spiritual and going on the journey to ourselves and going within. Maybe this erroneous idea that we had to be alone, or we had to follow a guru, or we had to go somewhere by ourselves and become that. This created a myth that to attain or achieve enlightenment, you had to completely withdraw. And I'd like to think that that's not at all true. I think it might be easier to withdraw. It maybe speed things up, but then again, maybe it wouldn't speed things up. Maybe there'd be more problems and obstacles. Also, people looking for guru, they usually doing years old, because they had enough wisdom by that time to garner the idea that they could find a teacher, be a teacher, go within, learn something. And anybody younger was not quite ready for that. We know that the year that Jesus walked he was 33 years old, so very close to that age. And you know that you have to be a certain age to be a senator. I believe it's 35 years old. So it's very interesting that seems to be the cutoff here. So a couple more things about him. In the hero's journey, which is something that we all endure in every part of our lives, our aspects of life. In other words, we go in, we go to attain a goal, we have helpers, we have, spiritual magic things happen, we have people battling against us, we try to find the prize, we try to get that prize and bring it back, and in the meantime, we start all over again with another one. And I like using that particular hero or heroine's journey, overlapping our lives, and then our life at work, and our life at family, and our life at whatever it is that we're interested in. This archetype can materialize his own dreams and holds up what's been ignored or lost by society. I like that. So there's magic within, if you could see the magic. Innocence appears drowned in our current paradigm. And in many places, it's an anarchist world. When this was written in this book, we were talking about Watergate and other things. We're right back where we started from. We never have learned anything, and we're still in this anarchist state. The idea that we are at the center, and in rough times, this can mean the center cannot hold. And we know the center cannot hold. Why? Because in politics, there is no center anymore. There's no centrists. There's no people that can come to a middle of the road. Everybody is one way or the other way. Our core is devoid of its center, and the meaning of life has been replaced by, you name it, greed, lust, power, fear, gluttony, all kinds of other things. We need to turn from that physical and come into that internal in order to find balance, because what's out here is an illusion. Money is an illusion. Power is an illusion, because one can lose both in a very short period of time and not have either. Jung believed that the urge for meaning was our prime motivator from the moment we were born until we die. In other words, he says that through we use this idea that we must make meaning in our psyches, in our egos, and we have all we ever wanted since birth right within us to make that meaning, because meaning is made individually. Sometimes we can agree what something means, but most of the time it's your meaning that's most important. So here's a couple of things that I found that were fascinating to me, and I wanted to share. Man's overpowering need to feel passionately about something is part of a grand design transcending ego concerns to dedicate one's life and energy to the service of a higher authority. This begins our journey toward consciousness by projecting this authority onto external figures like our president, the king, the pope, the emperor. In this tarot series that we're going over, they've followed the hero through those years and now have come to the ascetic. If the hero is ready to observe and listen, the wise old man can help him to find a lamp of his own. But if the hero is not yet ripe for the message, he may misinterpret it in a variety of strange ways. He may not be ready. He may think he's ready. He may not be ready for his own lantern at all, because the hermit is a teacher. Once you are a teacher, you have to let your students go, just as the student must let the teacher go. But in turn, the student becomes the teacher, and the cycle continues over and over again. We don't have to have a formal teaching degree or be in front of a huge group of people. We are teachers and we are students of life. Let's see. Thought. Oh, yes. It seems difficult for us to accept the lonely path to self-realization. The art of individuation, of becoming one's own unique self, is an intensely personal and lonely experience. It's not a group phenomenon. You can't do this in a group, is what it's saying. It involves the task of disentangling one's own identity from the mass of mankind. To discover who we are, we must withdraw those parts of ourselves which we have projected onto others, learning to find deep within our own psyches the potentials and shortcomings which we have formerly seen only in others, because that which we see in others is actually a part of ourselves. We are nothing more than mirrors of ourselves. Sometimes the hermit can bring us into a spirited dialogue and be of use to help as a flow of creative inspiration above our human selves, or even bring us back down to the ground again and choose from the golden fire, the one small flame in which we will grow from. One who has attained any kind of self-realization is a solitary in relation to the general run of mankind, and destined to remain so until the others, in their own time and their own way, reaches their own level of enlightenment. That's why when we say to ourselves, I wish these people would wake up. What's wrong with the people? And, why don't they see this? It doesn't make any sense. They can't see it. They aren't ready to see it. They aren't looking for it. They aren't interested in it. They don't understand it. They are just going to live their lives in this incarnation at a very low level. And that is something hard for those who would like to see them pulled up to live. The Hermit Tarot symbolizes mankind, perhaps, the lonely or wanderer on the earth carrying a small lamp to illuminate the increasing mass-mindedness which threatened to overwhelm his world. Man stands at the brink of a revolution in human consciousness. Perhaps the needed help will in fact descend from the skies. Perhaps it can only be found in the constellations. The Hermit's number 9 reflects many of the ideas. Standing alone, 9 represents the height of power by a single number. This is very, very important. Because you have to start over again in the next part of it in order for you to move into a whole consciousness level. The Hermit star on the lantern represents 2 directions, inner and outer. He is our teacher who shows up to bring us to find our way if we are ready to go with him. The Hermit's older image was the hourglass, as I said, and that was a symbol of time, the correct time to come. It also was Saturn, who is the taskmaster. And this one here says that perhaps the change led to this new view, a more Christianized figure in the Rider-Waite deck. So the Hermit means transition, allowing hidden parts of ourselves to speak to us, or hidden parts that are out there and known to others to come and bring us illumination. We have a symbol more of wise old men who are hermits and teachers. Even in our dreams, we have men, not women. And we have a definite guide from within when we have the Hermit, but we may find a real guide like I did in my teacher when she told me she was the Hermit personified. And then later I decided at some point in my life to also take up that gauntlet and become the Hermit personified in my own life. So yes, these are getting a lot deeper. These are getting, sometimes the explanations are getting, harder and harder to discern. However, the messages are always correct and right there in this particular group of cards, archetypally, because we do know archetypally we have the wise old man as a figure that we see. It is a symbolic partner in our archetypal world and the way we look at the tarot and ourselves. Thank you so much. I'll be back with the next one in a few days or maybe a week.